He said that Taiwan stole the chip industry. He said they took it. In business speak, that means fair and square. The same way that Uber Eats took Food Panda's business.
They took almost 100% of our chip industry. I give them credit. That's because stupid people were running the country.
Nor did he comment on whether or not the U.S. had an obligation to help Taiwan, but the media portrayed it as if Trump is completely unfriendly to Taiwan and is all about them dollar bills. I'm willing to bet the majority of Taiwanese media saw this little 20-second clip or something similar and just completely ran with it as a headline.
我的天哪，台湾完蛋了！如果没有付美国的保护费，川普会把我卖给中国了。讲话越大声越快有意义了。我代志大条。Loud noises!
Turn on the Taiwanese news and this is the type of panic you've been seeing. Because allegedly, Trump said that Taiwan stole American semiconductor jobs. When he becomes president, he will make Taiwan pay a protection fee.
I don't know what I said. I don't remember.
Because after all,
it's just business.
And after he got shot, TSMC stock saw a huge drop for 2 straight days. And as a result, many Taiwanese people are concluding that if Trump gets back in that White House, it will spell doomsday for Taiwan.
I don't think so, darling.
Well, today, I'm going to reveal to you exactly what Trump said word for word, as well as showing you what he said in the past about Taiwan to give you a clearer picture of what exactly Taiwan's fate will be in the hands of a Trump presidency 2.0. And once you see and hear the full, unedited, contextual truth, then you can finally decide for yourself how Trump just may deal with Taiwan.
I don't really care about offending people.
So, smash that like button to help the algorithm, and you can bring back popcorn for this episode, but be careful of slope roofs, yo, as you are about to witness the very slippery slope of carefully planned cognitive warfare. The internet age, full of fake, distorted, and heavily edited information weaponized to deceive, trigger, and disinform the average unsuspecting netizen. When it comes to news organizations and even social media platforms, I always heavily suspect the authenticity of what they are showing me. Whenever I saw both American and Taiwanese media outlets putting forth these quotes, I immediately began to suspect. Now, there were so many news organizations saying the exact same thing, but I had a hard time finding the source, and ultimately I did. It came from Bloomberg Magazine, who did a complete profile on Donald Trump. And when I clicked in to read what it was all about, I was hit with a paywall. So I paid the subscription and got access to every single word, unedited, of what Donald Trump said. Now, before I show you that, I want you to have a listen to what the author of that article said in this interview.
So I sat down with him and a few of my colleagues from Business Week at Mar-a-Lago. We were there for about 90 minutes. We got 90 minutes with him, and we had a very wide-ranging conversation about business, the U.S. economy. We talked about Taiwan, Russia, his legal cases. This was before the shooting and 2 days before the debate, just to give you a sense of his mindset.
So, Trump's statements came 2 days before his debate with Biden. That's nearly a month ago, yo. And as we've already seen, a lot can change in a short period of time. Now, this article is long. I mean, really long. And Trump's comments on Taiwan is a lot more than the 2 sentences you saw plastered all over mainstream media. So, let's have a look at exactly what he said.
Would you defend Taiwan against China?
Look, a couple of things. Number one, Taiwan. I know the people very well and respect them greatly. They did take about 100% of our chip business. I think Taiwan should pay us for defense. You know, we're no different than an insurance company. Taiwan doesn't give us anything. Taiwan is 9,500 miles away. It's 68 miles away from China. A slight advantage, and China's a massive piece of land. They could just bombard it. They don't even need to, they can literally just send shells. Now, they don't want to do that because they don't want to lose all those chip plants. You know, all those plants, and they don't want to do that.
Okay, so there are 2 things that stand out in this passage. Firstly, the question the interviewer asked. She asked, would he defend Taiwan against China? This is what kicked off the entire conversation. And the second thing, Trump said that Taiwan is very important, but that he would also ask them to pay a protection fee. Now, the way I see it, this statement isn't a perspective from Trump as a bureaucrat or even Trump as a politician. This statement is from the perspective of Trump as an American. Because the way he sees it,
你们台湾人怎么那么有钱呐？如果你要保护你那花力气呀。
Billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions.
But then he goes on from there to say even more.
It's the apple of China's eye. It was the apple. It's the apple of his eye. But the day I left, they sent 28 bombers right over the top. And they've been very aggressive ever since. They got ships all over the place. I wouldn't feel so secure right now if I was them, but remember this. Taiwan took our chip business from us. How stupid are we? They took all of our chip business. They're immensely wealthy, and I don't think we're any different from an insurance policy. Why? Why are we doing this? They took almost 100% of our chip industry. I give them credit. That's because stupid people were running the country. We should have never let that happen. Now we're giving them billions of dollars to build new chips in our country, and then they're going to take that too. In other words, they'll build it, but then they'll bring it back to their country.
So there's one thing you need to keep in mind. This interview was held exactly 202 days from the date that we have to actually choose the next American president. And both Biden and Trump's ultimate goal is to say things that will convince people to show up and vote for them. They are trying to convince the American people, not the Taiwanese people. And that means making statements and promises that the American voters can identify with. I mean, could you imagine if Trump said something like this?
Oh yes, by the way, I'm going to commit so many troops, you won't believe it, to go and fight in a war that has nothing to do with us, absolutely nothing, for a very tiny island that most of us can't even find on a map. I mean, where is it really?
You think Americans would get behind a statement like that?
No.
Now, of course, there is a better way he could have said it. He could have said that he would prioritize the safety of young American soldiers and bring jobs back to America and make America great again. Everything else is second priority. But unfortunately, that's not how he said it. What he basically said is, if they pay us, we'll show up. We'll be there if we see the money.
What do you have to lose by trying?
Which subtly tells those anti-war Americans that if America receives money, if they sign a contract, that they have to show up. Otherwise, imagine if Trump takes office and all the anti-war Xiaocaihong start protesting the way they did whenever they supported Hamas and were against Israel. Could you imagine them marching in the street saying,
"One China, no Taiwan"?
So now that you understand the full time and space context of what Trump said and how he said it, let's look at how the media actually portrayed it.
That Trump suggested to you that the U.S. may not actually have a duty to defend Taiwan, that Taiwan maybe should actually pay the United States for protection. What should we make of that?
I thought it was a remarkable moment in the interview. We ended up asking, a lot of economic questions about sanctions against Russia, and we asked about Taiwan sort of as a throwaway question. He basically came out and said, what has Taiwan done for us? We have been Taiwan's insurance policy for years. They stole our chips business. I'm just not sure it makes sense for us to, keep defending them when China wants them so badly.
So not once in that interview did he say that Taiwan stole the chip industry. He said they took it. In business speak, that means fair and square. The same way that Uber Eats took Food Panda's business.
They took almost 100% of our chip industry. I give them credit. That's because stupid people were running the country.
Nor did he comment on whether or not the U.S. had an obligation to help Taiwan. But the media portrayed it as if Trump is completely unfriendly to Taiwan and is all about them dollar bills. I'm willing to bet the majority of Taiwanese media saw this little 20-second clip or something similar and just completely ran with it as a headline.
Give me a break. That's a bunch of malarkey.
Cognitive warfare at its best, and it worked so well. Just take a look at TSMC's stock price in the Taiwanese stock market and you'll see loud and clear. Trump has a very famous catchphrase.
You're fired.
No, not that one, yo. Trump has another catchphrase. And for the past 10 years, he not only has been saying this to Taiwan, but also to almost every major U.S. ally.
Show me the money.
Fun fact, I like Donald Trump.
You need to leave.
No, not as a president. Hard pass on that, yo. But as a shit talker, this orange nigga is second to none. He is an expert entertainer. Even some of the world's greatest comedians give Donald Trump his props.
Yeah, objectively funny,
How
Judy.
was he funny?
Regardless Every time he speaks, you laugh. Literally the definition of funny.
He was funny. He was
funny for a comedian.
That guy's funny. He might be an asshole. People might hate him. He might be a problem as a president. Blah, 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 blah. You can't deny that occasionally he is fucking hilarious.
Now, what Donald Trump says on the mic is golden for entertainment, but an absolute disaster for politics. My man talks to the press and the reporters like they're his close private friends.
You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy.
It's true with stars that they can grab women by the
Well, that's what it's. If you look over the last million years, I guess that's been largely true. Not always, but largely true. Unfortunately or fortunately.
No president in history has dodged bullets like Trump or danced like he's double dick juggling like Trump, and certainly no president has publicly said on a hot mic that he wanted to grab someone by the pussy.
It's not easy doing what I do, is it?
Real talk. When it comes to the words that flows out of his mouth, Trump is pretty much a Super Saiyan level Hautita ambassador, saying wild shit, not just because it's fun, but because it builds a brand too. And when it comes to Trump saying that he wants to charge Taiwan protection fees, bruh, this ain't the first time, yo. He said this to almost every major country that America has ties with.
So we're defending a wonderful nation, a nation that we have great relationships, but we're asking them to pay for a big percentage of what we're doing. It's not fair. We're defending nations that are very wealthy. South Korea is a very wealthy nation. They make our television sets, they make ships, they make everything. And I give them great credit. We've been defending them for many, many decades, as you know, over 8 decades. And again, the relationship is great, but it's just not a fair relationship. But on the military, I mean, we're paying for the military to defend another nation that's 8,500 miles away. And they're not the only one I'm talking to, by the way, as you know. I won't go into names, but I've done this. Nobody talks about it, but I think it's appropriate. I think the taxpayer of our country, taxpayers want to hear these things.
So if you don't get an actual check from the Mexican government for $8 or $10 or $12 billion, whatever it will cost, how are you going to make them pay for the wall?
I will, and the wall just got 10 feet taller, believe me. Just got 10 feet taller.
So from Mexico to South Korea to Japan, Trump expects everyone to pay him for protection. But in those cases, he was at a press conference. But in this next bit, you will see Trump say this right in front of all of Europe.
But 23 of the 28 member nations are still not paying what they should be paying and what they are supposed to be paying for their defense. This is not fair to the people and taxpayers of the United States. And many of these nations owe massive amounts of money from past years and not paying in those past years. Over the last 8 years, the United States spent more on defense than all other NATO countries combined. If all NATO members had spent just 2% of their GDP on defense last year, we would have had another $119 billion for our collective defense and for the financing of additional NATO reserves.
The balls on this guy. But Trump doesn't stop there. Oh, no, no, no. He goes so far as to say it to the king of one of the richest countries in the entire world.
We protect Saudi Arabia. Would you say they're rich? And I love the king, King Solomon, but I said, King, we're protecting you. You might not be there for 2 weeks without us. You have to pay for your military. And Japan is going to also contribute. You know, Japan, we protect Japan. They pay us a small percentage. We protect South Korea. They pay us. And by the way, we're doing great on North Korea, but South Korea, they got to reimburse us.
So if you ask me, charging countries for a protection fee has just become Trump's very thin catchphrase. And you have to remember, this is the guy who went to the WWE during this presidential campaign. Trump is an absolute expert at marketing and grabbing people's attention. But if you ask me, I don't really think he understands how things work. Let's go back to the whole statement about Taiwan taking the chip industry from America. This is because the cost in America was too goddamn high. Oh, and did I mention that TSMC has spent 4 years trying to build a factory in my home state and they still ain't finished? Shit, it only took Japan 1 year to build that, yo. Now this is due to labor unions and environmental problems and a whole bunch of other shit. But in the end, Trump saying that Taiwan took America's chip business is a little bit of nonsense, yo.
It was all bullshit.
And here's another thing. I think the past 4 years have shown us very clearly that what a US president says isn't really that important at all. I mean, look at Biden. This fool don't even know who the president of Ukraine is, or who his vice president is, or even who his secretary of state is.
Look at the heat I'm getting because I named the Secretary of Defense to a black man. I named Ketanji Brown. I mean, because of the people I've named.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there.
All this in the US is still functioning relatively well. If it's one thing that the Biden and the Trump presidency revealed to the world is that literally anyone can be president. Because the most important thing is not the president himself, but the people who surround him. The people in his cabinet, his Senate, and the House of Representatives. And if you look at the people surrounding Trump, especially his vice president, you will see that the CCP, Taiwan's #1 enemy, is in some deep shit. So after 4 long years of a Biden presidency, I realized one important thing. Even without a US president, America will be fine. And after seeing that debate between Biden and Trump, I think a lot of Americans saw the same thing. A senior citizen suffering from serious cognitive decline who can barely tell his asshole from his elbow. But in spite of all this, the country tends to be running pretty normally. And it's all because of the people around him, the people he has in his cabinet. So for Donald J. Trump, a senior citizen who loves to talk a lot of shit, if you really want to see what his policy toward Taiwan might be, look no further than the people he surrounds himself with in his cabinet. Back when he was president, he had 15 people in his cabinet, and 4 of them were in charge of national security and foreign policy. There was Trump's first Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson.
We've made important commitments to Taiwan through the Taiwan Relations Act, through the 6 Issues Accord, and I think we should express a reaffirmation of those. Again, this is part of this this approach that I'm trying to lay out over and over, that we've made commitments to people. We need to reaffirm those commitments and live up to those commitments. And I think it's important that Taiwan know that we are going to live up to the commitments under the Relations Act and the Six Issues Accord. That in and of itself is a message.
And then there was the oh-so-famous and legendary Mike Pompeo, who many Taiwanese people know because he visited this place several times. In fact, Mike was the first Secretary of State to visit Taiwan since 1979. And he is also responsible for lifting the long-standing restrictions of contacts between U.S. officials and Taiwanese officials, which has been directly responsible for the shift in policy towards Taiwan.
America's diplomatic recognition of the 23 million freedom-loving Taiwanese people and its legal, democratically elected government can no longer be ignored, avoided, or treated as secondary. It is my view that the United States government should immediately take necessary and long overdue steps to do the right and obvious thing, that is to offer the Republic of China Taiwan America's diplomatic recognition as a free and sovereign country.
Word on the street is that if he gets a call from Trump, Mike Pompeo will be more than happy to serve as his Secretary of State once again, which could be a very good thing for Taiwan. In addition to them, there was also Trump's former National Security Advisor, John Bolton, who publicly stated that Washington should recognize Taiwan as a legit diplomatic country. And of course, there's a jailbird, aka the former Deputy Assistant to President Trump, Peter Navarro, who has been very outspoken about his anti-China rhetoric and very insistent that America support Taiwan at all costs. Now, that was Trump's cabinet then, and we have no idea who he will put in his cabinet if he gets elected again. But there's at least one person we absolutely do know will be a part of his cabinet, Vice Presidential candidate J.D. Vance. And when it comes to Taiwan and China, this fool is very clear.
This is really important for Americans to understand. The Taiwanese control the American information technology industry because we allowed them to manufacture all of our computer chips.
90%.
If the Taiwanese fall to China, it will cause a great depression in this country. We have to prevent that from happening, but to prevent it, we have to be self-sufficient and we have to make our own weapons.
Right.
Well, you know, my question on the hard red line, I mean, look, I think we should defend Taiwan. I think that if the Chinese took Taiwan, it would be catastrophic. But look, let's be honest with ourselves and let's be realistic here. If the cost of defending Taiwan is 500,000 American lives, then of course we don't do it. The political will isn't there to do it. There's obviously no capacity for us to even, I think, devote that level of military resources to the island. If, however, we can increase the cost of China invading Taiwan, I think that fundamentally has to be American policy here, is make it so costly they don't do it in the first place. And to do that, you really have to provide them with sufficient defensive weapons so that, you know, they have hell to pay crossing the sea in the first place. And then once they try to establish a beachhead, likely in the southern part of the island, they have the sufficient artillery and other munitions to beat these guys back. So I think that's how you deal with the problem.
What are the weapons we should be giving the Taiwanese to make it less likely that China will invade? And what are the weapons that we have given to the Ukrainians over the last 2 years? And how do those things overlap? Because given our limited defense industrial base, we can't manufacture that many weapons because, you know, we idiotically decided to allow everybody else to manufacture stuff for us. Because of that, how much damage are we doing to our munitions supply by continuing to do what we're doing in Ukraine? The answer, it turns out, is a lot. Like, there is a direct cannibalization between what we need to send to the Taiwanese and what we're sending to the Ukrainians. So you can say, and it sounds somewhat reasonable, that we're the richest country in the history of the world, and we can send $20 billion to Ukraine over the next 2 months, and we can send $15 billion to the Taiwanese. But the Chinese are not going to be pushed back from Taiwan with dollar bills, right? They're going to be pushed back with bullets. So when people tell you there's no tension between our Ukrainian policy and our Taiwanese/China policy, they're full of.
So not only does he want to wrap up the war in Ukraine, but Vance wants to deal with the CCP directly and defend Taiwan. And in case you had any doubts, when it comes to economic policy on China, Trump is going to be brutal.
And right now, as we speak, large factories just started are being built across the border in Mexico. So with all the other things happening on our border, and they're being built by China to make cars and to sell them into our country. No tax, no anything. The United Auto Workers ought to be ashamed. We don't mind that happening, but those plants are going to be built in the United States, and our people are going to man those plants. And if they don't agree with us, we'll put a tariff of approximately 100 to 200% on each car, and they will be unsellable in the United States.
So let this be a lesson. When Trump starts talking shit, don't take them words as legit.
Now I know.
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!
By the way, I spent a lot of time trying to collect and research and fact check everything that Trump has previously said on Taiwan to try to get an idea of how he might deal with Taiwan in the future. And as we get closer and closer to the American election, you can bet your ass there will be plenty of slithering, sly YouTubers peddling their anti-American rhetoric, claiming that America will abandon Taiwan and not to trust America, and almost all of them will not even be American. But you do know one YouTuber who's American? Me, nigga. Pretty soon, actually in a couple of weeks, I'll be Taiwanese as well. 身份证、护照、户口名簿 and everything. And I can guarantee you one thing. I ain't going anywhere. I ain't abandoning nobody. And I'm willing to bet that there are plenty of Americans who live in Taiwan just like me who think the exact same way.